Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Grand Rising, good morning. Isn't it funny how the spiritual folks, if you guys have noticed and you follow like a lot of spiritual folks, they say Grand Rising. That was when I moved into a community house in LA. I remember someone being like, no, we say Grand Rising because there's nothing to mourn about. I liked that. But I also believe that we do have things to mourn about sometimes, and it's okay to go there sometimes. So good morning is also okay. Because good morning. It's a good morning. You get it. Hello, everybody. I am 11. Thanks for being here. I felt compelled to come on and give a little story time because yesterday I actually went to a church for the first time since I hadn't been in a church since the day that we did my dad's memorial. That was one time that I went to a church more recently over the last few years. And then the time before that was when I was married. And I was, married to a Christian worship leader at a gospel church here in Los Angeles. So I was sharing a little bit of my story, and I don't know if I've actually fully shared this with you guys. So it was really precious to be in a home church. And this was by my friend KJ Songs. She goes by Queer Praise here on Instagram, and she has gathered the troops and created a really diversified choir. And the songs are very inclusive. They are hymns and they are precious. And one thing that I absolutely love about, I have missed about church, is the worship service. I really love singing to God. I love singing, and God to me means spirit, creator, source, light. That's love. That's what I believe God to be. So I always say, Great Spirit, you who are known by 1,000 names, and you who are the unnameable one. That's who God is to me, to just be clear. So I went to this. I was very much looking forward to this because I've been hearing some whispers that KJ was pulling this together, and it feels really good to be in an inclusive space that welcomes all different folks, and there is no, you can't sit with us type of energy and this really weird sort of divisive energy. Well, I believe that in any sort of community space, you can definitely feel, nervous systems. And due to the pandemic, we're all trying to figure out how to share space and create just this. Do you guys relate? After this pandemic, it's been challenging to be in spaces with lots of folks, unless you're in the festival circuit and you're kind of dancing and really moving the energy, which I think is really positive. This festival type of craze is, I think, really good. The ancestors were doing it. They're dancing to drum beats and moving the energy, which is a form of alchemy. It is a form of, kicking up the cells and then moving the body. And that's what the body needs to do. So if you're feeling like you have some stagnancy in your system, shake it out, dance it out, move. Movement practice is super important. So singing also, really important way of travel to move energy and to really ultimately get to the bottom of your truth. And so opening up our voices and singing to God, to me, I also sing to the moon, I sing to the sun. I love to sing to the moon at night on full moons. Wow, it's one of my most precious ways of travel to commune with Great Spirit. And then also at sunset, I love to sing to the sun setting as well. And to me, that's singing to God as well, creation. And so to round back to this church, it just felt really good to be in a space where people were worshiping, and I was raising my hands again and singing to Great Spirit and feeling so just jazzed. What a fun word to use. That's the word that came to mind. I felt jazzed to see others, to witness others, to close my eyes, and I'll get emotional, but there was so much resonance, because sound creates resonance. And that is the most, how do I even put this into combined letters of the alphabet? It's a precious, precious act. And it's been unfortunately, with anything, you know, sometimes it can get perverted, and there's a preciousness to coming to church and singing together and really being in worship. And we have churches that, you know, all churches have different aspects to them, but yet I had kind of had a bad taste in my mouth because I had been to mega churches, and my dad had warned me, my family had warned me, careful. These mega churches technically, you know, are, technically that's a weird word to use, but like deep down have I think a beautiful heart, right? But then, you know, more money, more problems. So when you got like a lot of tithe and wealth being exchanged, then it becomes a commodity and a business. And I myself have been commodified as even a vessel, right? So I have even been a commodity for brands. And so it becomes an interesting mental health game. So with church, when you're being, you know, when you're traversing the sacred, then church can be a very delicate place when people are vulnerable and they're transmuting some really deep emotions. So when you have a lot of people that are vulnerable, then that can be also susceptible to some energies that maybe aren't fully always aligned. So with that, I don't want to get into necessarily preaching about, you know, what I've seen behind the scenes in churches, but I have seen quite a bit. And I have also had pretty intense dreams about churches and back in the day, and like a lot of the things that happened with Hillsong before, if you guys are familiar with Hillsong Church, which is actually a music label. It's a church as well, but it's a music label. Music, sound frequency is a really, you know, it's a very, very powerful thing, and you can use it to manipulate, right? This is why we talk about Neurolinguistic Programming, even just words that we're saying with our mouth. Like right now, let me just break the fourth wall. I'm making sounds with my mouth, and you are taking them in and transcribing them in your mind to create meaning, right? And so you may be sitting here really resonating with what I'm saying. I think you would be resonating if you're here. So with music, the same thing. And so music is a spell. It can be a spell. And so it's really important to find your way. And so to see all these people worshiping together was so precious, and to be lifting my hands and like in full worship to God felt really, really good. And then also to share my story a little bit, because they opened it up. So it was held in a circle. One thing, if you study the etymology, which is what the breakdown of what words mean and where they came from, the word church is circuit, circus, circle. Same, all, like it's all in line. You can look this up. So originally meeting in circles was a really beautiful act, and so we've kind of gotten away from that, and it's become a higher hierarchy, and we're like kind of like looking towards a pulpit, and we're immediately like, while granted they are like referencing scripture, they're using storytelling. You know, this is one of the most ancient art forms. And so it felt really, really nice to be able to share my voice as well. They opened it up a few different times for people to share. So yeah, thank you, KJ, for just being really present in the space. And there was like breath work throughout it. So just bringing us back to our breath and just moving the energy, shaking it out. And like, it was a transformational workshop / church service. So I'm not unaccustomed or unaware of these types of spaces because I obviously host retreats. So to see it actually wrapped all together in more of a church service was so encouraging, so encouraging. And battery was dying. I'm back. Okay. So yeah, it felt really, really beautiful. And I just want to encourage all of you that, you know, I mentioned in my story that I shared briefly when the circle was opened, I said, this is church. Thank you, thank you, thank you, because church is not four walls. Church is not a building, you guys. This is church, technically, because where two or more agree, their spirit is. So if you're feeling lonely, maybe some of you did go to church, maybe you still do. There was a woman there yesterday that I connected with. Shout out to Erica, sweet, sweet soul. And she actually does go to a church down in, I think she said Newport or Irvine or something like that. And she was moved to tears to be in the presence of so much unconditional love. And it felt really precious to watch her be embraced and just be seen and recognized. And so I find that there's like buildings that you can go into that claim church. And church is also a metaphor, right? It's very meta. It's very meta. And so let's just be reminded that church is not a building that we go into. It's not a space. Church is you sitting on, I'm right here on Venice Beach Boardwalk. So church is going and sitting with someone that's home free and getting to know their story. Church is, like, we are the church. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience yesterday, and it felt really, really good to be back in that sort of experience. And I felt very encouraged because I've been seeing visions that this was all going to come to a very specific head, like these energetics of I believe you've heard me mention it before. I believe that we are starving for sacred. I believe that there's a lot of us that want to be in these community spaces that allow us to be in really sacred worship. And so to do it with others amplifies, and it's a really lost experience for a lot of us. And I definitely have church hurt. I'm one of those kids that's got like church hurt. And I mentioned that, being married to a Christian worship leader's wife, so we were in leadership. Not one person from the church reached out to me to see if I was, okay. My name was smeared as kind of like the Jezebel of the church because I just am mastering my own duality and being honest with who I am. And I am a sexual being. Ooh, that's how we all got here, folks. God forbid, pun intended, God forbid, I may be a sexual creature. Whoa. And so to be smeared kind of like as this Jezebel figure, and if you guys don't know what that means, it's basically like the sacred holy whore. That's really the actual meaning of it. The sacred holy whore. So yeah, I find that there's like this whole purity culture. Shame and guilt can really keep you bound. And so there's a lot of sexual suppression happening in the entirety of this planet. And so, there's a lot of speculation that when some of these things become legalized, and it sounds scary, don't get me wrong, but when some of these things become legalized and kind of brought forward, that a lot of this stuff will kind of level out. So what I mean by that, just to like kind of like unpack and like pull it, is like sex work and certain things, once these things are more like not so shamed. I know this is something that I haven't really talked about online, but once these things can kind of be normalized, like we are creatures that desire connection ultimately, if we can break it down. So the fact that this has been extremely shamed creates a fragment in the soul, and then shame gets in, guilt comes in, and this then becomes a really dangerous trap, because then we've got people dicking around in darkness, pun intended. So when there's a fragment in the soul, right, and homosexuality is a perfect gateway as well, because then you get people in shame, and then guess what? Then there's a lot of people that end up doing bad things and hurting young and beautiful, innocent people. So we've got human sex trafficking happening, and we've got all of this really demonic energetic happening simultaneously, while we've got like the desire for sacred white bright light, because that's who we are as crystalline beings, right? We are all children of great spirits, and so we all came in as a star, just like this bright white light. So do we have dualistic tendencies? Yeah, dude, that's why I have the fucking yin yang tattoo, and a lot of people are afraid of their own shadow. Excuse me. So they either suppress or they end up doing things in the shadows, and that's a dangerous game. So interesting. Thank you, Diana, for being here. I always got, there's like me poking at me sometimes just to see my reaction. My reactionary, that's part of my gene keys, is actually like one of my shadow qualities is reaction. And so as we're coding our own matrix, we're like seeing what sort of things kind of like really poke at us to get us all riled up. And I'm feeling like it takes a lot these days, which is pretty cool. It shows a lot of the integration that I've done. So You've always got to get used to the naysayers. Do you know what I mean? You got to get used to it. It's great. It's a part of it. It's a part of the game. To give you guys context, there's somebody, because if you're watching this back later, this is what's fun. If you're watching this back later, there's a woman on here named Diana, and she's saying this person is so full of shit, i.e. me. I'm actually not. I took a shit this morning, so I'm not full of shit right now. But, you know, that's a very interesting euphemism to use. I'm not full of shit right now. But I might be later. We'll check back in. Diana, you and me. We'll check back in. I just like to get behind all of it. So that's my story. It felt really fucking cool to be amongst just like sex positive, very diverse and beautiful folks that desire to worship God. How fucking cool. And I see visions of I've seen this for years. You know, I remember being at the gospel church that my ex-husband and I, you know, he was a leader at. So by virtue of being his wife, I was a leader too, right? So I remember being in those pews or like the chairs and worshiping and listen, we're all fallible, right? But when you've got pastors like you've got like billionaire pastors, bro, it just gets a little interesting. That's all I'm saying. And I was a missionary kid, so I have a personal experience of just what that can be like, man, you know, of like actually being on mission, right? And then the tithe, that's where the tithe is supposed to go, is to people that are going to like actually be on mission. And that was my family. My dad was going to India and like Ecuador and using his gifts to really share the gospel. And our family definitely, also I want to just call forward that my dad was not also the best at asking for support all the time. Like he had a little bit of an ego there, like asking for support for his mission work and his family of 4. So I love my pops. He was so sweet, but like I think he also could have definitely used some more skill sets in his own business, right? Because like his business was soul work, and so he could also have believed about, you know, himself a little bit more sure-footed, but he came from a lot of trauma. So I love my pops, and I learned so much from him. And what I'm learning is to integrate both aspects of being like, dude, I am on mission, I am on the motherfucking front lines, and like that is worthy of being fully financially held as well, right? Prosperity. So lots of integration. I hope that you guys are with me, and I really appreciate. Hi, Catherine. I love you, Katie. Love you, love you, love you. Thanks for letting me verbally process and hanging with me while I do this. I think it's important to keep you guys in the loop. And some of you guys follow me from church. Some of you guys follow me from my Christian high school that I went to. And I think that there's like a very interesting array of folks that follow me because they can't really not. We'll put it that way. They're too curious. You're too curious. You're like, what's going on here? I really want to pin this person as like evil or something. And I'm like, ooh, there's a verse in the Bible that says, careful, you may be entertaining angels without even knowing it. We out here, guys, and we may not have like big white wings. And so if you know, you know. But I love you guys beyond measure. That feels complete. This transmission feels complete. So I will round it out with saying, hold steadfast. Trust in the process. Your people are out there, the folks that are able to handle all of you, all aspects of you. If you are also seeking support and desiring someone to walk with you through the trenches, I do have a spiritual mentorship. I just got off the phone with one of my clients this morning. In fact, she just accidentally butt dialed me, but I was like, hey, are you okay? So part of working with me is we develop a really incredible friendship ultimately. And so I'm walking with you guys through the trenches and whatever that means to you, right? Every client of mine is, oh yay, and Steph's here, and Steph is one of my clients. I love, and by clients I say mentees, mentors. Let there be no leader amongst us. That's how I always want that to feel. There's no hierarchy. I really want it to feel symbiotic. And so if you guys are seeking one-on-one support and you desire to kind of go to more of the depths, I have some spaciousness to take on a couple more folks. I'm actually moving back here to LA. So lots of shifts moving, so we can meet if you're LA based or you desire to come to an in-person immersion. Have something coming up on 11/11 as well, so we can hang out in person and be face to face and sing by the fire. That's like what the ancestors did. So just like really sharing in community. So if you're desiring to go deeper, to really seek support and kind of contemplate together, I do have a curriculum that I guide people with through to really get to the depths and kind of like uncover and get to like where you desire to be heading and really crystallizing some of your dreams and schemes. So you're not alone. You got this. You're not too much. That's one of my things, guys. One of my shadows is that I feel like I'm too much sometimes. I feel like I'm too sexual, too spiritual, too dark, too light, too, it's like too much. So like one of my shadows is that I feel nervous that I'm too much for people. And then I feel like I'm always like, who are my actual friends who like can really accept all of me? And there are those, and the circle actually is getting smaller and smaller, and that's okay. That's also okay. It's all a part of it. So, this is just a little bit. Yeah, thanks, Phoenix. You get it. Phoenix used to live with us in the Venice Beach house when we lived in community, and Phoenix knows all about it. If you're a gamer, I think that you kind of understand duality. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the whole part of it. So, yeah, Phoenix gets it. She literally has a chosen name of Phoenix because she rose from the ashes. So, I never have to dim my truth with you, babe, and I really appreciate that. So, anyways, guys, I love you beyond measure. You are my soul's treasure. And I really appreciate these moments to have you. I wish, that it was like interactive where I could have like all of these little bubbles and it like be more of like a clubhouse sort of thing where I could hear you guys in the background, because that would be cool too. Maybe there's a new app. Can someone create that where, we can kind of like, it's like a Zoom, but it's like a live Zoom that you can just kind of pop on, and then people will be able to pop on, and there's little bubbles, and maybe I could like, instead of like pressing wave like this, I could just press this and I could hear like a little thing from you, because auditory, I'm an auditory person. I really like that. That'd be cool. Maybe I just manifested someone millions of dollars for them to create a new app or an update on Instagram. You're welcome, Mark Zuckerberg. Just kidding. Okay. That's all for now. I love you guys, and I'll see you very soon. Be well.